It was late in the summer when 5 friends, Rachel, Tom, Sophie, Mike, and Hannah, decided to go camping in Ravenwood Forest. The forest was infamous for its eerie legends and stories of people disappearing without a trace. Despite the ominous rumors, the group was eager for adventure and a break from the mundane city life. The journey to the forest was filled with excitement. They loaded their backpacks with supplies, shared laughs, and talked about the ghost stories they had heard. Rachel, always the skeptic, dismissed the tales as superstitions. Tom, however, was intrigued by the mystery, eager to explore and uncover any hidden truths. They arrived at the forest just before sunset, the towering trees casting long shadows across the dirt path. The air was cool, and the forest was eerily silent, save for the occasional chirping of crickets. They found a suitable clearing near a small, stagnant pond and set up their tents. As night fell, they gathered around the campfire, its warm glow casting flickering shadows on their faces. Mike pulled out a guitar, strumming a few chords, while Sophie and Hannah roasted marshmallows. The mood was light, filled with laughter and playful banter. But as the night grew deeper, an unsettling quiet settled over the forest. The wind rustled through the trees, and distant whispers seemed to drift through the air. Rachel heard it first, a soft, almost imperceptible murmur that sent a shiver down her spine. "Did you guys hear that?" she asked, looking around. "Hear what?" Tom replied, his eyes scanning the darkness beyond the firelight. "That whispering. It's probably nothing," Rachel said, shaking her head. But the whispers grew louder, more distinct. They sounded like voices, but none of them could make out the words. The group exchanged uneasy glances. Mike laughed nervously, trying to lighten the mood. "Come on, it's just the wind," he said. Then, a shadow flitted past the edge of the clearing, barely visible in the dim light. Sophie saw it and gasped, clutching Hannah's arm. "Did you see that?" she whispered. "I saw something," Hannah replied, her voice trembling. "It looked like a person." Tom, ever the adventurer, grabbed a flashlight. "I'm going to check it out," he said, standing up. "Wait here." "Are you crazy?" Rachel asked. "We should all stick together." "I'll be fine," Tom assured her. "I'll just take a quick look and come back." Reluctantly, the others let him go, watching as his flashlight beam bobbed through the trees. Minutes passed, then half an hour. Tom didn't return. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, and the shadows seemed to close in around them. Worried, Mike stood up. "I'm going after him," he said. "We can't just sit here." "No, we need to stay together," Rachel insisted. "If we split up, we'll all get lost." But Mike was determined. "I'll be careful," he promised. "I'll just go a little way and call for him." Reluctantly, the group let him go. Mike disappeared into the darkness, his voice calling out for Tom, but he too didn't return. Panic set in. Sophie began to cry, clinging to Hannah, who tried to console her. "We need to leave," Rachel said firmly. "Now." "But what about Tom and Mike?" Hannah asked, tears streaming down her face. "We'll find help," Rachel replied. "We can't stay here." They hurriedly packed up what they could carry and started back toward the trail, but the forest seemed to shift around them. The path they had taken earlier was gone, replaced by dense thickets and gnarled trees. The whispers were deafening now, a cacophony of voices echoing through the woods. Sophie screamed as a shadowy figure appeared in front of them, blocking their path. It was humanoid but distorted, its features obscured by darkness. The figure raised a hand, and Sophie collapsed to the ground, unconscious. "Hannah, help me!" Rachel shouted, trying to drag Sophie away, but Hannah was frozen in fear. The figure advanced, and Hannah disappeared into the shadows. Rachel was alone. Trembling, she knelt by Sophie's side, shaking her awake. "Sophie, wake up! We have to go!" Sophie stirred, her eyes fluttering open. "What happened?" she asked weakly. "No time to explain," Rachel said, pulling her to her feet. "We have to get out of here." Together, they stumbled through the forest, the whispers pursuing them. Rachel's heart pounded in her chest as she tried to navigate the unfamiliar terrain. The trees seemed to close in around them, and the shadows danced with malicious intent. They reached a clearing and collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath. The whispers had subsided, and for a moment, there was silence. Rachel looked around, trying to gather her thoughts. "We need to find out what's going on," she said. "There has to be an explanation." Sophie nodded, too exhausted to speak. They decided to follow the only path they could see, hoping it would lead them to safety or answers. The path led them to a decrepit cabin, hidden among the trees. It looked abandoned, its windows shattered, and the door hanging ajar. Cautiously, they stepped inside. The air was thick with dust, and the floorboards creaked under their weight. In the center of the room was a table, covered in old, yellowed papers. Rachel picked one up, her eyes widening as she read. The papers detailed the tragic history of Ravenwood Forest. Long ago, it had been the site of a massacre. A group of settlers had been attacked by a mysterious force, leaving none alive. The survivors of neighboring villages claimed the forest was cursed, haunted by the vengeful spirits of those who had perished. As Rachel read, she realized that the same fate had befallen them. The forest spirits were still active, preying on anyone who dared to enter. They had to break the curse to survive. "How do we stop it?" Sophie asked, her voice trembling. Rachel searched the papers, finding a ritual that promised to appease the spirits and lift the curse. They needed to find a sacred site within the forest and perform the ritual before dawn. Determined, they left the cabin and ventured deeper into the forest. The whispers returned, but Rachel was focused. They found the site, an ancient stone circle covered in moss. Rachel followed the instructions, chanting the words written on the paper. As she completed the ritual, the forest grew eerily silent. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and the shadows retreated. The sun began to rise, casting a warm glow over the trees. Rachel and Sophie collapsed to the ground, relief washing over them. They had survived. But as they stood to leave, they realized the forest was still and silent. Their friends were gone, lost to the forest's dark past. With heavy hearts, they made their way back to civilization, vowing never to return. The legend of Ravenwood Forest would live on, but they had uncovered the truth. The spirits had been appeased, but the memories of that night would haunt Rachel and Sophie forever.